Hello there, I'm Gloria Makarenko. Now, art does not have to wait for the pandemic to end, nor does good food. We are enjoying what we can on the program today. This is Our Vancouver. Coming up, the warm and welcoming winter drinks of the region. And battered fish and tacos of all kinds at a new restaurant in Maple Ridge. But first, the annual Push Performance Festival puts innovation on the stage and screen. Now, Vancouver's Push Festival is on now. There is innovative performance art of every kind happening both in person and online this year, including a unique play called Do You Mind If I Sit Here? With us today, James Long, the director and co-artistic director of Theatre Replacement, and Marcus Youssef is the writer. So Do You Mind If I Sit Here? It's at the Russian Hall from January 26th to 29th. Hello there. How are you doing? How are you both doing?
Very good, Gloria. Hi.
Nice to have you.
Hey,
here.
Gloria. Thanks for having us.
Nice to have you here. Now, James, the Russian Hall is the setting. This is an important place in real life and also in this play. So just what is the concept of this story?
Well, the basic premise, and it's got a long history because I have a studio space. Theatre Replacement has had a studio space in the Russian Hall for about 11 or 12 years. So we're deeply invested in the building. And the premise of the play is it's somewhere in the near future, and 3 planners have entered the Russian Hall for the first time in about 30 years because it has been left derelict, with the task of repurposing it for the community, and they run into a bit of a problem. And the story goes from there.
Okay. And you went through a lot of old file footage to start this as well, James?
Yeah, it started off, Marcus and I were in here working on a show called Winners and Losers that we eventually performed all over the world over the last, decade or so. And procrastinating, as we often did during that process, we found ourselves in a closet near the studio and found about 20 hours of 16 millimeter film that intrigued us immediately. And eventually we got a projector and started watching them.
Okay, so Marcus, take it from there then. How much of the footage did you watch before writing the play?
Well, we knew at that time, and this is 10 years ago, as Jamie said, that the footage was really, really interesting to us. It's so the Russian Hall in the 1950s and 60s was actually a kind of cultural outpost of the Comintern, the Communist International that was seeking to spread the word about the success of the Soviet Revolution. And so these were actually propaganda films and informational films to some extent that had been sent to the Russian diaspora in Vancouver to show people, to go, look, the revolution is succeeding, like the Soviet life is a great life. And super interesting for us to watch those in the context of 2012 or 2014 or whatever it was, knowing by that time the Soviet Union and as an idea had completely collapsed. So that was the kind of the first super interesting thing. And then I think it was Jamie who had the notion about looking at progress and the idea of progress and who wins and who loses in progress and who succeeds and who fails in progress in relationship to the hall itself, which, as he said, is a space that he and many of us in the arts community feel really, really connected to as an arts center.
Oh, okay. I love this old footage as the basis. But James, in terms of transferring all of this to stage, what's happening on stage while this story unfolds?
Well, we're just figuring that out right now. We got about a week before opening, and hopefully we'll know by that point. But it's it's an austere setting for sure. The idea is that we are in the near future, and things have continued on as they are right now, which is pretty problematic when you think about the climate and the multiple changes and the pandemics and everything else that we've been facing for the last little while. So the 3 enter the space in a very scarce time with the intention of having a community engagement session, which I think a lot of us have taken part in as our city continues to change around us. And they engage the audience directly at certain parts in the play, and there's other parts of the play where it's very private conversations as they deal with a human relic inside this building that's providing a lot of complications in this idea of progress. How do you move forward and who do you leave behind? It becomes a central question.
Now, James, you're also a graduate of urban planning as well as theater. So how much did you pull from your old studies in directing this? You know, you're talking about change and progress here.
And I think this is just a continuation of my thesis project, which was all about community engagement and looking at the question of community engagement and how it impacts artists and the arts they make, the art they make. Just when community engagement became a very big priority for certainly the BC government around 2010, 2008. And we started having to respond to that question. How do we engage with our public beyond just making art for them? So I've taken that thesis question and now it's really wound itself into this project as an artist, and this is a term that Marcus uses with me all the time that comes from the UK and an artist named Grayson Perry. But the artist often is the shock troop of gentrification. We're the first ones in. This was a Russian people's home for 80 years. And the artists are the first wave of pushing those people out towards who knows what comes next.
Whoa, the shock troop. So, Marcus, what do you think this play that's set in the future using images from the past, what does it say about our human condition today?
Well, I'm really glad you asked me that question, Gloria, because it's actually exactly what I wanted to talk about. I think this futuristic scenario that Jamie has really devised, why I got really excited about working on it, is because as someone who's, I don't have an urban studies degree, master's, but I spend a lot of time thinking about and working in municipal politics, and and I think we share that, and I think that what happens in the play, which is that these people come to make something better for the community, and find an old person who can't function in the community anymore. They are past the ability to adapt to the changes that are occurring, and I believe that question is central to the future life of our city, which is developing so quickly because of, and in certain ways, because of the economic forces that surround us, that people are being marginalized and left behind. And I think that question is a critical one for the city. And I was so excited when Jamie came to me, because it's seeking to explore that question in an artistic way, not a polemic way or like as a newspaper article, but as actually through living, breathing characters who we interact directly with live in person, even during a pandemic.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, and I'd like to hear from each of you but before I let you go. Here we are in a pandemic. How does creating a piece of work in a pandemic impact what you create? Marcus?
Yeah, well, it's impacted impacted me pretty seriously. Last Friday, I tested positive for Omicron and began to show symptoms. So I've been home from rehearsal, trying to watch rehearsals on Zoom and respond as the co-writer on those. I don't recommend that as a cure for COVID for anyone. Watching theater on Zoom is definitely not gonna help you feel better. So in a really practical way, I've been distanced from this show at the most critical point for me as the co-writer. So that's something to contend with. On the upside, I would say that it's once again, and I think I've even said this to you in different contexts, Gloria, it's a testament to like the way in which we as a community are really working with each other to figure out how to move forward. And our audiences are absolutely willing. Push festival shows are almost all sold out, are willing to figure out together how we move forward in this new and hopefully temporary reality.
Well, I love to hear about the success of the ticket sales, and I'm very sorry to hear that you got COVID in the midst of this as well. And James, what do you want to weigh in on that as well? Just the effect or the impact of doing major productions like this in the midst of COVID?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just kind of formulating my director's note that I have to put on a program and realized that each of our workshops, our major workshops, have coincided with massive events. The first one was a few weeks after George Floyd's murder. The second one was inside the heat dome when Lytton burned to the ground. The third last work period was simultaneous with the first atmospheric river. And this is all umbrellaed by the pandemic. And each of those things amounted to huge, huge change and consideration, social consideration, all inside of the pandemic. And the one benefit of all the pivots and the changes and the reschedules and losing people inside of this process is that we get to come into a room, masked or not, and talk about it. We talk about the things that are happening to ourselves right now. And each of those pieces, each of those major transformations have found themselves inside the show in different ways. And again, not a polemic, but they've integrated it. And we've been able to respond to each of those moments as a very tiny community working on this piece. So it's been a bit of a gift.
Well, sure. Well, Marcus, we wish you well on your recovery. And thank you both. Thank you for your creativity and what you bring to the region. It's wonderful.
Thanks for asking.
Thanks, Gloria.
This is our Vancouver.
All right, now it's time for one of our favorite features. This is where we get to showcase a number of the photographs sent in by you, our audience. Let's start here. Alice Wang was out for a walk near UBC and looked up, way up, to find this bald eagle near the top of a tree. Wonderful image there, Alice. Thank you so much for sending that in. And Foribor's Allegenbad was on Harris Road in Pitt Meadows for this beautiful scene. Now, if you look really close, you can see a paddler there in the middle of the image. Thank you so much. And finally, Leza Baez found this beauty in the city with this construction scene and the crane cutting through that majestic magenta sky. Just lovely. And do send us more. It's easy. Just email some of your favorite photographs to us at bcphotos@cbc.ca. That's bcphotos@cbc.ca. Now, there's no doubt it has been a cold winter recently in BC. So how do you beat the chill? For some, it's a warm, comforting drink. Well, our Benit Braich is looking at some of your options, and they come from all parts of the world.
BC is such a diverse province with so many different cultures. Each of them have their own cozy drinks to keep warm in the winter. Let's start off with this Indigenous tea.
Often called swamp tea. Sometimes people also call it Labrador tea. It's really growing in many different nations across Turtle Island.
Turtle Island refers to the continent of North America, and that's where Labrador tea leaves are often found in wetlands.
It's most fragrant in the winter. It's very soothing and calming. It's very good for the respiratory system.
For about a 1 liter pot, it'll be about 5 to 7 leaves. Simmer it for 15 minutes. Really working with plants is like bringing your ancestors to sit at the table with you.
Baljit Singh Brar prepares cha at this gurdwara every day. Cha is a black tea base with lots of milk and spices. Add tea bags. Add a bit of fennel, carom seed, black cloves, cardamom, and ginger. Have it simmer. Then add milk and bring to a boil. Then add sugar. It smells really good with the cloves. The whole family gets together and drinks it. Our bodies feel fresh. We really like it.
The pu'er tea is from Yunnan province of China. Perfect to drink in a cold day or at night. Add hot water over the pot. So this way the teapot will get the heat so that the lid will open up easily. Rinse the tea the first time.
He repeats the step.
And pour the rinsing tea over the pot to keep it warm. And wait for about 15-18 seconds. Right, so the tea becomes very dark and earthy. Very good for calming, warming, relaxing.
It tastes a little bit like beer, but it's not beer. It's not alcoholic even. Ingredients is very simple. It's rye bread, raisin, little bit sugar, and water. You just mix them together, and you ferment it for 3 days. It's very good drink for your health because this drink it's produced from natural ingredients, and winter time it helps a lot after hangover, and it's because it stabilizes your health.
Coming up, Canadian researchers have developed a new tool to map our shrinking glaciers. Johanna Wagstaff will join us right after the break.
think if you rely on, hydroelectric power, if you rely on any kind of, mountain environments for, transport, or, there are pipelines that go near glaciers. There are all kinds of things that are ways that glaciers influence everyone's daily lives. I think there's a lot of concern, and a lot of models have shown that, BC might have, 100 years left of, glaciated environments. And I think we're maybe underestimating that.
That's Alex Bevington, the lead author on a new paper from the University of Northern British Columbia. He's developed a new tool to map Western Canada's glaciers using satellites.
Essentially, the last time that glaciers were systematically mapped in British Columbia and Alberta was in 2005. So since then, we have really no idea where the glaciers are. I mean, we know where they are. We know where they were in 2005, but they've changed quite a bit since then. So we took about 12,000 satellite images, and we developed an automatic mapping tool to be able to map glaciers without human intervention. And so that's important because we have about 14,000 glaciers in British Columbia.
We all probably know by now that climate change is shrinking Canada's glaciers. But what the data from space also showed was that they're shrinking at an accelerated rate. And it's a trend that will continue to accelerate according to forward modeling. For every degree of warming, BC and Alberta will lose roughly 500 square kilometers of ice. The team picked up on something else too. As the glaciers lose mass and get smaller, another geologic feature is actually growing.
There's lakes growing at the front of glaciers. We call them proglacial lakes. And this is something that we really have no grasp on in British Columbia. We don't know where all these lakes are. We don't know how fast they're growing. And lakes are important because they also present a bit of a risk. Glacier forefields are quite dynamic environments. You get a lot of landsliding, you get a lot of chunks of ice falling off. It's a very dynamic environment. And if you have a lake, those lakes are more susceptible to blowing out and having downstream consequences.
Alex and his team were able to show the area of proglacial lakes grew 5 times faster over this last decade in Western Canada. Add to that the fact that glaciers represent a critical source of stored fresh water in Western Canada, and it makes protecting them by drastically reducing human-induced greenhouse gases all the more important. And now, your Science Mark. If you have a science question on your mind, send me a tweet. I'll try to get it answered.
Hi, this is Benji at Vancouver Studio Glass, and this is our Vancouver.
Johanna, thank you so much for that. You are watching Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Macarenko. Now, with all the hardship experienced with restaurants throughout the pandemic, it's interesting to see a few new places opening up. strEATs is a Western Canadian chain that takes food truck favorites into a venue, and there are several of them in the Fraser Valley, with the newest one just opening in Maple Ridge. And former CFL player Michael Klassen is the owner of strEATs. Michael, hello there.
Hi, how you doing?
I am doing well. Okay, an exciting time, a challenging time, but here you are, from football to fish tacos. How did you decide to make your move into restaurants?
I kind of just fell into it. It's a family business. My father had started Joey's Restaurants and had great success for 30 some years. And, now the new blood came along and kind of helped and started to create a brand new thing. And we're starting to see success with that, which is, it's fun, it's interesting, it's challenging, and it's motivating all at once, just to see new faces and a new demographic come try our food.
Well, sure. And what have you learned from your dad and his success? I mean, 30 years is nothing to laugh at.
Yeah, you work hard long enough, and hopefully someday things might start to pay off.
That's good. Okay, so stay in it for the long run. I'm hearing that. I'm hearing that for sure. So can you show us what you've got there at strEATs? What's the food like?
So the majority of what we do is tacos. We're not authentic Mexican. We never claim to be authentic Mexicans. We kind of do our own twist on tacos, right? Just like all pizza is not necessarily from the Neapolitan area in Italy. Neither do tacos have to be from Mexico. So we do a Baja, the most amazing Baja fish taco. So that would probably be your most authentic. But we have other interesting flavors like a mango shrimp, a piri-piri, a buffalo chicken. And we always have monthly features that evolve, and we kind of throw whatever else we want at the menu. We also have offerings of poutines, bowls if you're looking for something a little healthier. And as well as burritos. And then, of course, we had to keep the fish and chips on there as honor and homage to my father and his brand. Had great success.
Aha, the fish and chips. Is there a secret to that fish and chip batter?
Oh yeah, there is. Proprietary blend, just like KFC's 15 spices and blends. We will not divulge our secrets. So I apologize.
I appreciate that and I respect that. Okay. But, all the same, we're talking about challenges in the time of COVID. It's a really, really strange time for restaurants, right? A hard time for some as well. So what would you say is your recipe for success so far?
I guess one major thing we've done the last 2 years since the start of COVID is we're able to pivot very quickly, being a quick serve restaurant, meaning not quite fast food, but not table service or white. So we push a lot of our marketing towards delivery and takeout, and our takeout and dine-in numbers have flipped completely. So about 70% of our sales are takeout. And I think one of the reasons we're having a lot of success through COVID is because the inability of people being able to go dine in at restaurants. So they're looking for an option similar to ours. So that's a huge reason. And then I think just being in smaller spaces and having a lesser footprint. So, our overhead isn't as huge. I feel sorry for some of these huge restaurants that shut down repeatedly with 100 or 200 seats that they can't fill. Most of our restaurants are, around 20 seats. So even if we are allowed to be open, we can easily accommodate. But when we do get shut down, it's easy to still let traffic come through for the takeout option.
Yeah, no, I think being adaptable to takeout is key in these times for sure. So what kind of reaction have you had to your food? What do people say?
People, for the most part, I think they love our food. We have a very loyal following. People are genuinely surprised at the freshness and the ingredients we use. We cook all our proteins in-house, which a lot of QSR fast food restaurants can't say the same. The salsas, from our mango salsa to our pico de gallo, that's raw tomatoes, that's raw jalapenos, that's raw onions coming through our doors that we're cutting and making it specifically to be fresh in our coolers. So lots of fresh items and made in-house, which I think catch people off by surprise, and it shows in the quality that they receive.
We wish you all the success, Michael. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate this.
A reminder that the Push Festival is on now, and it includes all forms of performing arts, including dance. Joseph Tuga's dance performance is a kinetic expression of defiance with racial identity as the site of both oppression and pride. He's on stage at Performance Works January 25th to 27th, and the shows are also streamed. Go to the Push website for details. And Nyo Kong Kai's song cycle uses imagery, piano, the human voice, and more to create a tragic but beautiful cry of protest. That is at the Waterfront Theatre, online February 4th to 6th. Again, go to the Push website for information and tickets.
Hey, I'm Grant Lawrence from CBC Music, coming to you from home still, and definitely not feeling that great, but hey, the beat goes on, right? And what better way to feel better than to look ahead at some of the great new Canadian music on the horizon in 2022. Now, it's worth noting that the biggest record of the year may have already been released. Yeah, I'm talking about The Weeknd's new album, Dawn FM, which came out on January 7th, and that's obviously huge. But I want to take you on a spin through some of the artists with upcoming releases that might not be on your radar yet, starting with Saskatoon artist Katie Tupper.
How can I get your love? Get your love. How can I get your love? Get your love. I know you got another lover, but being honest, that don't matter. So how can I get your
Yeah, that's the neo soul of Katie Tupper from the Paris of the Prairies, Saskatoon, same as this toque from Amigos. That's Katie Tupper's new single, How Can I Get Your Love, which is currently climbing the CBC Music Top 20. Tupper's debut EP is set to be released later this year, and veteran indie rock god Dan Behar, aka Destroyer, returns as well in 2022 with his 13th full-length album. Here's a taste.
Tintoretto is for you. The ceiling's on fire, and the contract is binding your little one sick. At the sight, insert 3 syllables here at night. They drop you from a great height into a war that you were born to lose.
Yeah, that's Destroyer with his ever-evolving sound on that new song called Tintoretto, It's For You. The record is called Labyrinthitis, and Destroyer's record will be released in March with a big, hopeful North American tour to follow. And now here is a fresh band for 2022 called Tallies. That's also climbing the CBC Music Top 20 as I lie here. And that is the warm, fuzzy feels of Toronto indie pop band Tallies with their song No Dreams of Fairs from their upcoming new album slated for later in 2022. And along those same sound vibes comes new music for a new year from the acclaimed BC singer-songwriter Jordan Klassen.
21 and no more run, I fell into a hospital of priests. We were a little in love with the potential of revival and asking who was greatest or the least. Now we say we just got carried away.
Oh, wow, I'm feeling better already. Seemingly channeling the best of Sufjan Stevens or Bon Iver. That is Jordan Klassen from BC's Fraser Valley with his new song, Carried Away. It's from his upcoming album in 2022, and those are just a few of the new Canadian releases for the new year that you need to add to your 2022 playlist. Find out more about this year's upcoming releases at cbcmusic.ca. I'm Grant Lawrence. Hopefully I'll feel better next week and I'll be back in the studio with you. Stay safe out there.
Coming up, Canada is sending athletes but not dignitaries to the Beijing Olympics. Hi, welcome back to Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Makarenko. Well, here we are just 2 weeks away from the start of the Beijing Winter Olympics. Now, back in December, Canada, along with the United States and a number of other countries, announced that they would be participating in a diplomatic boycott of the Games. But our athletes are still competing. So if our athletes are still going, what exactly is a diplomatic boycott? Kids News contributor Isabel McNeil has that answer.
Okay, so you're probably wondering why I'm running late to my own video, right? Well, I'm not. I just wanted to give you a strong image of what it would look like if I boycotted it. Why? Because this episode of KN Explains is all about the diplomatic boycotts of the 2022 Beijing Olympics. So what does this have to do with the Olympics? And how is a diplomatic boycott different from a, well, regular boycott? Turns out there's a pretty lengthy history of boycotts at the Olympics. These particular boycotts are typically done by a country protesting something that the host country or another participating country has done that they don't agree with. I'll give you a couple examples. The first Olympic boycotts took place at the 1956 Summer Olympics in Melbourne, Australia, and there were more than just one. China began a lengthy boycott that ended in 1980 because Taiwan was allowed to compete as a country. Spain, Switzerland, and the Netherlands boycotted the Games in response to the former Soviet Union's invasion of Hungary. And Lebanon, Iraq, and Egypt boycotted the Games in response to the Suez Crisis. These were athletic boycotts, meaning the countries did not participate and stopped any of their athletes from attending. As far as those countries were concerned, the Olympics weren't happening. Think of it like cancel culture. Another big boycott was at the 1980 Summer Olympics in Moscow, where the US disagreed with the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan and led a large boycott. 65 countries, including Canada, did not participate or send their athletes. Many of these countries were in support of the US boycotts, while others did not participate for other reasons. There's a lot more too, including the 1984 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles, where the former Soviet Union led a boycott with 13 other communist nations in response to the 1980 boycotts led by the US. But those are all athletic boycotts. What's happening now against the Beijing Olympics are called diplomatic boycotts. So what does that mean?
No government officials go to attend the Olympics.
That's Yachu Wang. She's a senior researcher at Human Rights Watch. So let me get this straight. Athletes are still going to the Olympics. Countries will be participating in opening and closing ceremonies. Everything will still be broadcasted. Athletes will still be going home with medals. And it's just country officials that won't be going? Let's visualize this. This is a photo from the opening ceremony from the Pyeongchang Olympics in 2018. The crowd is packed, which will be different this year because, well, COVID-19. Up here in this area is a delegation of government officials. They are attending in support of the Games and enjoying the show. So these people right here won't be there at the 2022 Games. Let's zoom out. Not a huge difference for someone watching the Games as a fan. So if there isn't some big visual absence or protest, what's the point? Before we jump into that, we need to understand what's happening in China. In recent years, criticism has been growing over China's human rights record.
We are extremely concerned by the repeated human rights violations.
Ongoing genocide and crimes against humanity in Xinjiang.
Now, the list is long and complicated, but according to Yachu, there are two main concerns.
In the Xinjiang area, where an estimated 1 million Uyghur and other Turkic Muslims are in the camps.
As a side note, if you've never heard of the Uyghurs in China, they are a minority Muslim population. In recent years, there have been major concerns about human rights abuses committed towards them by the Chinese government.
They are heavily surveilled. Their cultural religious practices are banned.
The other big criticism is how the Chinese government handled the takeover of Hong Kong. See, it used to be a part of the British Empire, but was handed over to the Chinese government in 1997. In recent years, the Chinese government
has dramatically escalated the crackdowns on Hong Kong's freedoms,
which has resulted in massive protests which have made headlines all around the world. According to Yachu, a diplomatic boycott is a way for the government to say,
we don't approve of many of your actions, including your human rights policies,
without punishing the athletes. And that's the key difference. Imagine being an athlete at one of those past boycotted Olympics where governments decided no one was going.
It was a heartbreaking experience. They spent so much of their lives training for it, and suddenly for them to be told that what they've dreamed of and put their lives and their money into for years and years is no longer possible.
So how will all of this affect the relationship between Canada and China?
Taking actions to diplomatically boycott the Olympics is going to worsen the relationship. It's still the right thing to do.
And China's response to these boycotts? Check this out. Okay, so will you and your family notice these boycotts when you're watching, say, alpine skiing, for example? No. But the point is, well, to make a point, Canada does not agree with China's human rights abuses, so they're participating in this diplomatic boycott to send them a message. That's it for Can Explains. For CBC Kids News, I'm Isabel McNeil. Boycotts can be some pretty complex stuff. To get a better understanding, I spoke to Alan Oldham, a graduate student at the International Center for Olympic Studies, and Yachu Wang, senior China researcher for Human Rights Watch. I also reference information from the following sites: CBC, Global Affairs Canada, and CNN.
This is our Vancouver.
Coming up, another industry is showing signs of short supply. It's getting tougher to find furniture. You are watching Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Makarenko. Now, if you've tried to buy a piece of furniture recently, you may have been shocked at the price, or maybe you're among the many who've ordered something but are still waiting. And that's because BC manufacturers and sellers are being hit hard by supply chain issues and higher material costs. And the hit to the wallet is expected to get even worse.
Keeping up with changing trends, that goes hand in hand with working in the furniture business. But what the industry is dealing with right now, that's a first.
There's never been price increase like this. There's never been delivery times like this. I've been here 44 years. I've never seen anything like it.
Essentially, every raw material used to make a sofa at Stylus' manufacturing factory is more expensive.
Plastic to wrap furniture, cardboard, any steel product. So the springs that go into a sofa, that has all gone up about 30% over the last year. We have another price increase coming next month of 18%.
Just last month, furniture giant IKEA warned its prices will increase an average of 9% globally in 2022, blaming significant transport and raw material constraints driving up costs.
These price increases that are starting to show up because of the tariffs mainly, and other supply chain issues as well.
The co-founder of Urban Barn also points to temporary production shutdowns and a surge in demand for new furniture when Canadians started working from home in early 2020. While customers may only see a 10 to 15% increase in prices right now, he expects that will increase.
Those prices are going to continue to rise just because furniture companies will no longer sit on this, the price increase to them without passing it on to the consumer.
And as a result, more people may turn to used furniture.
So, as the price differential moves, we might see a more demand for the price saving that might come from a decently preserved secondhand piece.
At Stylus, mounting costs and delays have led to 6 price increases for customers just in the last year,
Just to try to keep up.
with more likely to come. Isabel Regam, CBC News, Burnaby.
Isabel, thank you so much for that. Now, other items in low supply right now are electric bikes and cars, and there are a lot of companies making them these days. It wasn't always that way. Here's a story from 1989 when American entrepreneur Ed Ramirez sought investors to build his electric car, the XR1. He planned to build a factory in Campbell River, but that never happened. Here's Ian Hannamansing with the story from our CBC archives.
Electric cars used to be considered an idea for the future, but there's a man in British Columbia who believes the future has arrived. He's developed an electric car that he says can be easily mass-produced, and he's already lined up a few potential buyers. But as Ian Hannamansing reports, not everyone's convinced.
On looks alone, the XR1 is certainly eye-catching,
And the man who developed it says it's much more than just a pretty car.
I'm not a braggadocious person, but I'm here to tell you that it is the only real electric automobile in the entire world, bar none. That statement cannot be refuted. It cannot be challenged.
Ramirez says the XR1 is revolutionary. A top speed of over 100 kilometers an hour, 0 to 90 in about 12 seconds. A range between charges of up to 160 kilometers. And batteries that can be recharged overnight by plugging it into a wall socket. All of this can be mass-produced, he says, for $15,000 to $18,000 each. Last month, Ramirez and some local promoters told the people of Campbell River that their town would be the site of the first XR plant. With the promise of 500 jobs and even more spin-off business, the mayor says everyone's excited.
The reaction is very, very positive. We are a very progressive community, and we've got a lot of things going for us, but we can always use another good operation like this.
The car's promoters say the mayor is not the only one who's embraced the XR1. They say hundreds of people have already made deposits. David Kuntz has put down $1,000.
Putting my money down now has ensured me to get one of these special edition vehicles right now. So within a year, I'll have my car, I hope.
But not everyone is as excited about the XR1. All of the engineers we contacted said they doubted an electric car could be mass-produced for the price and with the specifications Ramirez is promised.
But you can't put them all together.
An engineer familiar with electric cars read through the XR's business plan, and he says he doesn't think the vehicle can live up to its billing.
With present-day batteries, that can't be done. You know, that's fairly clear, because he just doesn't have enough batteries in the vehicle to get the range that he says.
Peabody and the other engineers say there are two fundamental problems with the XR project. First, there is no evidence that the car has been independently tested to see if it goes as far and as fast as Ramirez promises. Second, there is no true prototype of the car. This version is much different than what is supposed to be mass-produced.
What he's got is like an experimental prototype that he's been working on. But what he needs to show people is the vehicle he's going to sell them.
If we put a sunroof...
Even without the prototype, Ramirez has been able to persuade people the car is for real. But his credibility has been in question before. He faces a civil fraud trial in Texas. The state alleges he and a partner received money for computers and never delivered them. And 25 years ago, Ramirez served 4 years in prison for bank robbery. He says he's been pardoned for the bank robbery and that the fraud allegations are groundless. And Ramirez adds the doubts people have about him and his car are just like the doubts people had about the light bulb, the telephone, and the airplane.
Isn't it strange that every one of those products have come to fruition? And what's even stranger is that every one of the people involved in every one of those products went through exactly what I'm going through now.
Ramirez vows a version of the XR1 will start rolling off the assembly line in about a year. But first, the promoters say they want a $25 million loan guarantee from the provincial government. The province is now studying that request. Ian Hanamansing, CBC News, Vancouver.
When we bring you stories here at CBC Vancouver, we have award-winning photographers out capturing the images that say so much. Now, still images add context, and they bring a lot more to the understanding of an event or an issue. So here are some of the latest from what happened this past week. And that's all for our Vancouver for this week. I hope you can join me weekday afternoons on CBC Radio 1 for On the Coast. For now, goodbye.